At the center, an elevated podium housed Representative Zalkrin of the Gliese Accord, known for his wisdom and cautious diplomacy. Today, his demeanor was different. Tension pulled at his smooth, azure features as he glanced down at a tablet displaying the latest findings on a small, unassuming planet recently admitted to their data networks, Earth. Esteemed members of the Council, Zalkrin began, his voice resonant but measured. We have received critical insights regarding the new sentient species, known as humans, from the Sol system. A species that has evolved under conditions unlike any we have encountered before. A hush fell over the chamber as Zalkrin paused, letting the gravity of his words settle. In the front row, Representative Loira of the Cygnus Collective, a species with a strong empathic sense, felt a peculiar twinge as she listened. Loira had been among the most vocal supporters of Earth's inclusion in the Council's network, seeing promise in humanity's adaptability. Now, though, even she sensed a thread of anxiety woven through Zalkrin's tone. Zalkrin continued, "Our preliminary observations indicate that humans possess traits that, frankly, raise questions about their place among us. Unlike most peaceful sentient beings, humans developed as apex predators within their ecosystem." A holographic display flickered to life behind him, showing images and videos of Earth's ancient landscapes, replete with forests, savannas, and mountain ranges. The visuals shifted rapidly, showcasing early human communities and their struggle for survival. Figures dressed in primitive hides wielded sharpened stones, fashioning tools and weapons. The representatives watched in stunned silence as scenes of hunting and combat played out, capturing the raw, visceral nature of human history. Apex predators, echoed Representative Tarova of the Zarnak, a race from a pacifist society that had known peace for millennia. His mandibles quivered with unease. Are we to understand they subsisted on violence? Indeed, Representative Tarova, Zalkrin replied, casting a glance at the data with visible discomfort. Humans not only hunted but thrived through competition, territoriality, and, eventually, organized warfare. Their survival hinged on their capacity to hunt, to strategize, and, in certain cases, to subjugate. These were not merely adaptations. They became cultural pillars. An air of bewilderment swept through the hall, with some representatives muttering in disbelief. For beings who had evolved to avoid conflict, the concept of evolution favoring aggression and adaptability for dominance seemed barbaric. Loira leaned forward, her features a mixture of curiosity and concern. But Representative Zalkrin, she interjected softly, surely these are ancient practices? Many species here had primal instincts in their origins. Surely humanity has transcended these impulses. Zalkrin's gaze met Loira's, and for a moment his expression softened, but his words remained measured. Our study indicates that while humans have progressed technologically, these instincts remain ingrained, perhaps more deeply than in any other species known to us. Humans exhibit a strange paradox. They are creatures of profound empathy, yet their histories are marked by conquest. They speak of peace but possess military capabilities beyond what one might expect from a species recently reaching interstellar contact. He gestured at the hologram again, now displaying scenes from more recent human history, vast armies, towering machines of war, and, perhaps most unsettling, the quiet resolve on the faces of soldiers before battles. Loira and others felt an unease settle in. How could a species with such a history of violent adaptation fit within the harmonious structures of the Council? This leaves us with a choice, Zalkrin said, breaking the silence that had gripped the room. We must decide whether to continue observing humanity, risking potential entanglement, or to avoid them altogether. As Zalkrin spoke, Loira sensed the fear seeping into the assembly. Wait, she interrupted, her tone calm but insistent. While their history is troubling, is it not also indicative of resilience? They survived where others might not. That adaptability could be a strength, perhaps even a valuable ally if properly guided. A murmur of agreement trickled through a few council members, intrigued by Loira's point. But Tarova was unconvinced. Resilience or ruthlessness? And what happens if we introduce a predator species into the galactic fold? What if our peaceful ways are seen as a weakness to exploit? Zalcrin raised a hand to quiet the chamber. Your concerns are valid. However, humanity is not simply a species of violence. They are also capable of altruism, of creativity, of self-sacrifice. It would be premature to judge based solely on their history of predation. Our own history is one of coexistence. Let us give them a chance to reveal themselves under observation and make our judgments accordingly. The council members exchanged wary glances. There was undeniable truth in Zalcrin's words. Humanity's contradictions, predatory instincts combined with acts of compassion and cooperation, were difficult to parse, unlike any species they had encountered before. After a brief silence, Zalcrin concluded, "We shall permit limited contact, under strict observation. Perhaps, in the process, we might understand what drives them." As the meeting adjourned, Laura's mind raced, torn between fascination and apprehension. The dossier's records and Zalcrin's words had painted an image of humanity that defied simple understanding. She realized that this endeavor to learn more about humans would not be without risk, but it was a risk she felt compelled to take. Driven by an insatiable curiosity to understand these creatures, apex predators who had, against all odds, reached for the stars. And so, with cautious hope and wary eyes, the council prepared to extend their first hand toward humanity. Whether it would be a handshake or the beginning of a clash of natures remained to be seen. Laura adjusted her breathing apparatus as she descended from the council ship onto the human base. The air was thick and earthy, carrying unfamiliar scents from alien flora that surrounded the outpost, yet Laura found herself invigorated. Beside her, Zalcrin maintained a composed silence, but she senses unease. This was the first time any Galactic Council representatives had come into direct contact with human leaders, and their mission was one of careful diplomacy, to understand these apex predators firsthand. Ahead of them, a group of humans approached, flanked by soldiers with rigid postures, hands resting casually yet alert on their belts. Leading the delegation was General Nicholas Adams, a tall man with a weathered face and penetrating gaze. He was an embodiment of the human spirit, calm, confident, yet watchful. Laura couldn't help but marvel at the starkness of his expression. His gaze was one of quiet scrutiny, as though assessing their every move, yet tempered by a practiced reserve. "General Adams," Zalcrin greeted, inclining his head with practiced grace. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I thank you for welcoming us." The general nodded. "The pleasure is ours," he replied, his tone measured, as though he weighed each word before releasing it. "We've been curious about your council, just as you have been about us." Laura felt a peculiar intensity from him, a trait uncommon among the diplomats she knew. It was as if Adams possessed a calm that was both reassuring and foreboding, a reflection of the council's findings on humanity's complex nature. She studied him closely, noting the subtle signs of a predator's intuition, his observant eyes, the relaxed yet alert stance, the slight tilt of his head as he assessed his visitors. "If I may ask," Laura began cautiously, "how would you describe your purpose here on this outpost?" Adam's gaze flickered briefly, and then he responded, "Exploration, mostly. The galaxy is vast, and we've only begun to understand it. But if I'm being honest, we're also here to prepare ourselves. The unknown requires a certain resilience." "Resilience?" Zalcrin echoed the word, his tone thoughtful. "Our council has been fascinated by this aspect of humanity. You speak of preparation, yet your history shows a pattern of active, even aggressive, engagement with the unknown." Adam's mouth quirked into a faint smile. "I suppose you're right. For us, survival often meant adapting quickly, pushing boundaries, and defending those boundaries when necessary. You could call it resilience, or you might call it something harsher. But I believe it's kept us alive." Laura sensed a subtle tension, threading through Zalcrin's posture. "Our people have thrived on principles of cooperation and balance, not predation. Your willingness to confront challenges head-on is unorthodox to us. We fear what this mindset could mean for galactic harmony. The general's eyes sharpened, a glint of something ancient and primal flashing within them. "You fear us," he said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. "I can understand that. But let me assure you, our intention isn't to disrupt your harmony. We've simply learned that peace isn't guaranteed. It's something we have to safeguard." Laura found herself intrigued by his words. There was an undeniable truth in them, a clarity that seemed to cut through the council's deliberations and theoretical discussions. This man, and likely many others like him, didn't approach life as a philosophical exercise. For humans, it seemed that peace was a choice they defended with resolve, not a natural state they fell into. "Your history shows you've often used force to protect what you value," she ventured carefully. "Do you not fear that such a mindset could lead to misunderstandings?" Adams looked at her thoughtfully, then gestured for her and Zalcrin to follow him into the outpost. As they walked, he spoke, choosing his words with deliberate precision. "Fear can be a useful tool, Representative Laura, but we've learned to temper it. Our military training instills discipline, not chaos. Yes, we fight when we must, but only when we must. The strength we've cultivated isn't just for war. It's for survival, for endurance. We respect order and value the lives of our people." They entered a conference room filled with holographic maps, strategic data projected in shimmering lights across the walls. Laura noted the intensity with which the soldiers analyzed each display, their focus unwavering. These were people who understood both calculation and commitment, and it showed in the careful organization of their plans and preparations. Zalcrin, after observing the room in silence, turned to Adams. "General, do you believe our council's ways are naive?" Adams paused, then shook his head slowly. "No, your ways are different, and there's wisdom in them. But Earth taught us hard lessons. We respect life, but we won't stand idle if threatened. It's a philosophy that many of us carry, especially Americans. To us, peace is valuable because it isn't guaranteed. Freedom, safety, these are things we've had to fight for time and again." Laura could sense the conflict within Zalcrin, the push and pull between his instinctive caution and a grudging respect for the human's determination. She felt it, too, an unsettling admiration for their convictions, even if it ran counter to the council's ideals. Yet, standing here among them, she understood, perhaps for the first time, that humanity's nature was not defined solely by its predatory instincts. There was strength here, tempered by choice and shaped by history. Adams seemed to read their hesitation and offered a small, reassuring smile. "Our methods may differ, representatives, but our goals are not so different. Like you, we value peace. We just take a different route to get there." Zalcrin nodded slowly, though the uncertainty lingered in his gaze. "Perhaps, General Adams, our worlds can meet at a crossroads where both our ways of life find balance. We came here today to understand, not to judge. And what we've learned so far has been enlightening." Adams extended his hand, a gesture humans used to seal agreements she'd read. Zalcrin hesitated, then clasped it, feeling the warmth of a human handshake, firm and steady. It was a gesture of a predator, perhaps, but one offering respect. Laura felt a tentative optimism bloom within her as they concluded the meeting. As they left, she glanced back at Adams and the soldiers, recognizing that the path ahead would not be without challenges. But this meeting had planted a seed of understanding, a fragile hope that perhaps apex predators and diplomats might find common ground after all. The Galactic Council security delegation huddled in their briefing chamber, watching in tense silence as scenes from Earth's military history flickered across the projector. Battles fought in deserts, jungles, cities, and mountains illustrated a pattern both fascinating and alarming. Humans, particularly their military leaders, seemed capable of adapting to nearly any environment, overcoming even insurmountable odds. They were relentless, innovative, and most concerningly unyielding. Zalcrin stood at the head of the group, his expression etched with the same wary respect he'd felt since the Council's first meeting with the humans. Despite his attempts to remain objective, he couldn't ignore the unease building within him. It seems that Earth's generals, particularly those from America, possess a reputation that borders on myth, he said, his voice filled with reluctant admiration. Their tactics and resilience have earned them a place not only in human history, but as figures of almost legendary status. Representative Laura, seated nearby, nodded thoughtfully. It is as if they're able to achieve the impossible, regardless of the cost. She glanced at the hollow display showing an image of one such general, General Catherine Hale. Hale's record was peppered with feats that defied logic, turning hopeless situations into strategic victories, rallying troops when morale was crushed, and making decisions with the precision of a master tactician. Zalcrin toggled the display to show a video of General Hale addressing her troops before a campaign. Her presence radiated a forceful calm, a resolve that projected absolute confidence even in the face of looming uncertainty. There was something about her tone, controlled yet commanding, that caught Laura's attention. It wasn't merely the determination of a leader. It was the ironclad will of someone who had chosen to bear the weight of responsibility fully, no matter the personal cost. Humans refer to this trait as iron will, Zalcrin said, his voice tinged with reverence. It is a concept foreign to many of us, yet it seems to be fundamental to these generals. Their willingness to sacrifice, to make ruthless decisions for the greater good. It is as though they walk a line between necessity and relentlessness. But what drives them to such extremes? Laura asked, a hint of wonder in her tone. Is it solely their instinct for survival, or something else? The chamber grew quiet as Zalcrin turned to address the group. For these generals, survival alone doesn't seem to be enough. They are not simply protecting their lives, but defending ideals. Freedom, sovereignty, justice. These concepts, abstract to us, seem to galvanize their actions. This resilience, even in the face of imminent defeat, is what sets them apart from most species we've encountered. He moved to another recording, this time depicting an infamous battle led by General Adams, whom Laura and Zalcrin had met earlier. His strategy had been described as daring, if not reckless. He had rallied his forces against overwhelming odds, using the terrain, surprise maneuvers, and psychological tactics that forced the enemy to question their own advantage. The footage showed Adams walking among his soldiers, speaking to them as individuals, restoring their spirits, and convincing them that victory was possible. Zalcrin paused the display, the image frozen on Adams' intense expression. They do not lead by command alone. They lead by example. They embed themselves in the struggles of their people, shouldering the same burdens and embracing the same risks. This, I believe, is what binds their soldiers to them. Laura considered this, a newfound respect blossoming within her. In her experience, leaders rarely engaged directly with those they led. They relied on authority and protocol. But these generals, they carried their soldiers' loyalty like a shield, wielding it as powerfully as any weapon. Such loyalty, she mused, can be a double-edged sword. These generals command devotion, yes, but at what cost? Her question hung in the air, a reminder of the Council's fears. Humans' unwavering commitment to ideals and to each other was as dangerous as it was compelling. Zalcrin switched the display to a somber scene. General Hale, standing amidst the aftermath of a hard-won victory. She looked weary, her face shadowed by loss, yet resolute. The cost was evident, but Hale's gaze was unwavering. They carry a burden none of us could bear, Zalcrin said quietly. Their decisions, each one is weighed against the lives they defend, yet they move forward, knowing that hesitation could mean destruction. This is what makes them apex predators, even among their own kind. They are willing to face their fears, their limits, and still press forward. As the display dimmed, a heavy silence fell over the delegation. They had come to understand the ferocity of human generals. But now, a deeper truth began to take shape. These leaders weren't driven by aggression alone. They were guided by a powerful sense of duty, a belief in something larger than themselves. And in that belief lay both their strength and their potential danger. Loira broke the silence, her voice soft but firm. It's clear why humans look up to these generals with such reverence. They are protectors, warriors, and, dare I say it, guardians of what they cherish most. But how will they view us if our values differ from theirs? If we choose to avoid conflict rather than engage with it? Zalcrin considered her words carefully. That is a question we must answer soon, Loira. For if our worlds are to coexist, we must understand not only what drives them, but what will hold them back. The weight of the Council's mission settled on them, casting a sense of urgency over the room. These generals were more than just strategists. They were the very embodiment of humanity's willpower. Their convictions had forged them into legends on Earth, and their resilience seemed boundless. If the Council was to proceed, it would need a strategy equal to the humans' own, a strategy built on insight, understanding, and perhaps a willingness to meet humanity's iron will with an iron resolve of their own. With the briefing concluded, Zalcrin looked to his team. We have much to consider, and our understanding of humanity is still in its infancy. But one thing is certain, we cannot ignore their strengths. We must prepare ourselves to stand alongside them, or to protect ourselves if we cannot. The chamber doors slid open, and the council members departed, each with a newfound sense of both apprehension and resolve. As Loira followed the others, her thoughts lingered on the human generals, figures who wielded not only weapons but the hearts and minds of their people. This understanding would demand their utmost dedication, for the true nature of humanity was both a promise and a challenge, and the outcome of their alliance or conflict could shape the future of the galaxy itself. Loira observed the soldiers with fascination as they moved through their morning drills, each one exuding a quiet intensity that seemed almost unnatural. It wasn't just their discipline. It was the resilience in their eyes, the way they pushed their limits with each breath, sweat, and controlled movement. These were not just fighters. They were a force in themselves, hardened by countless trials and bound by something far more profound than mere duty. Beside her, Zalcrin adjusted his translator device, watching them with a furrowed brow. "I struggle to understand," he admitted, his tone edged with both awe and unease. "They train not as though they expect battle, but as though it's inevitable. There's a certainty in their movements, as if each drill, each exertion, is a matter of survival." A human liaison, Captain James Ortega, turned toward them, overhearing Zalcrin's comment. His face broke into a faint, understanding smile. "For many of us, survival was once a day-to-day battle," he explained, nodding toward the soldiers. "Training like this, it's more than just preparation. It's a commitment, a reminder of what we're willing to endure to protect what we value." Loira studied Ortega closely. His eyes held that same fierce spark, the look she'd come to recognize in humans who had faced hardship and returned stronger for it. "But don't you tire of it?" she asked, unable to mask her curiosity. "This continuous, intense preparation, doesn't it weigh on you?" Ortega paused, as though considering how best to explain something that ran as deep as his bones. "It does," he admitted finally. "But that's part of the point. We endure now, so that when the moment comes, we're ready. Iron will, as we call it, isn't just about enduring the battle. It's about enduring everything that comes before it, too. The pain, the exhaustion, the fear. Especially the fear." Zalcrin exchanged a look with Loira. They'd read about this concept, this idea of iron will, but witnessing it firsthand brought a new depth to their understanding. It was the soldier's ability to face discomfort, even agony, without flinching that made them so formidable. Their conversation was interrupted by a voice calling out sharply, and the soldiers fell into neat lines, attentive and alert. A commanding figure stepped forward. Sergeant Elena Torres, a woman with a stance as solid as stone and a gaze that seemed to pierce through steel. She barked instructions, her tone firm but not harsh. and the soldiers responded with disciplined precision, each movement synchronized as if part of a single organism. "Sergeant Torres is one of our best," Ortega said, nodding with respect. "She's known for her ability to keep morale high, even in the harshest conditions. Her men would follow her anywhere. Laura couldn't help but be impressed. And they trust her completely?" Ortega's face softened. Trust is the foundation of everything here. These soldiers know that, come crisis or chaos, Torres will be right there with them, fighting shoulder to shoulder. That's how it is with all of us. We don't just fight for ourselves. We fight for each other. The word struck Laura with surprising force. She realized that these soldiers weren't motivated solely by individual survival or even loyalty to a cause. They were bound to one another by a deep, nearly unbreakable solidarity. It was as though each soldier was a link in a chain, forged and strengthened by those around them, their resolve multiplying together. Just then, a loud alarm blared through the training grounds. Without hesitation, the soldiers sprang into action, grabbing equipment, assembling into formation, and awaiting further orders with practiced calm. The air buzzed with focus and anticipation, the soldiers' faces set with determination as they readied themselves for whatever challenge lay ahead. Laura felt a tremor of unease as she watched. "Is this the real threat?" she asked, glancing at Ortega. "It's a drill," he reassured her, though his own posture had stiffened. "But they treat each one as though it's real, because one day it might be." The drill played out like a well-rehearsed dance. The soldiers coordinated their movements, covering one another as they advanced, communicating through hand signals and brief, whispered commands. Laura was struck by how seamlessly they moved as a unit, each one adapting instinctively to the actions of the others. There was no hesitation, no doubt, only a shared purpose and an unspoken bond. As the drill concluded, the soldiers lowered their weapons, breathing hard but steady, eyes alight with a fierce pride. They had once again tested their endurance, pushed their limits, and emerged stronger for it. Sergeant Torres gathered them, her voice carrying a sense of authority that resonated deeply with Laura. "Good work, everyone. Remember, every moment you give here is a moment saved when it counts. We fight with everything we have, not just because we have to, but because we choose to." The soldiers responded with a solemn nod, their expressions resolute. It was clear that they understood the weight of her words, each one internalizing them in their own way. As the soldiers dispersed, Ortega turned to Laura and Zalcrin, a glint of pride in his eyes. "That's what we call iron will. These soldiers aren't just following orders. They're preparing to defend something they believe in with their whole hearts." Laura felt a newfound respect for the humans, not just for their strength, but for the depth of their commitment. She glanced at Zalcrin, who met her gaze with a thoughtful nod, as if acknowledging the same revelation. "They are truly remarkable," Zalcrin said quietly. "It's rare to see such dedication, such unity of purpose." Ortega's face grew solemn. "This is who we are. It's not always easy, and it's not always peaceful, but it's how we survive, how we protect what matters most." The words hung in the air, weighty and true, and Laura realized that these soldiers, with their unyielding will and unwavering loyalty, represented something the Council had not fully understood. They were a force bound not just by training, but by an unbreakable bond, a chain of iron wills, forged through struggle and strengthened by choice. As she and Zalcrin left the training grounds, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Council had set out to learn about humanity, but now, she sensed, they would have to come to terms with a powerful truth. If they wished to coexist with these apex predators, they would need to understand the strength that came from such conviction, and perhaps find a strength of their own to match it.